In today's session, I will be explaining about how you can utilize a Sitecore Headless services to make transformation. The agenda of today's session is the introduction about the session, and I will be covering about uh, what is Sitecore Headless services and available Sitecore Headless content product which can be utilized to use as a Sitecore Headless content provider, and also why move to Sitecore Headless and feature comparison between different components which involve in the Sitecore headless architecture. So I will be explaining about that, how to, what are the ways to provision that, and what are the different products are there. And then I will be covering about some of the different architecture about a Sitecore headless framework, as well as a how to utilize a Sitecore search while you are building a Sitecore headless application, and also high level information about the experience edge, as well as how the experience editor is working in the headless, and some important things to remember when you are proposing about a uh, Sitecore headless framework. And at then we are open for the Q&A. And it's about me, myself, Amit. I'm having around 19 plus years of experience and currently working as a solution architect with Avanade, and mostly worked on the Microsoft tech stack, including the Sitecore. So you can reach out to me any of the social media channel if you have any query and wanted to connect with me. And though this session will be providing the information about Sitecore Headless CMS and the Sitecore Headless Services framework, as well as different architectural component which can be useful to propose a Sitecore headless framework, as well as why we need to go with the headless and what are the things you need to remember and include in your effort estimation, so that you will be not missing any of the main points which you need to take care at a later stage. And what are the benefit of a Sitecore composable product? And coming to the first section like a what is Sitecore headless services. So I will be first upon a comparison between a traditional versus headless CMS. So you all mostly worked on the ASP.NET MVC based Sitecore headless CMS. So in those implementation, your front end and back end are tightly coupled because you generally deploy your front end application into the content delivery server. So if you are creating a MVC views and if you need to do any changes, so you need to follow the complete process from the back end to the CM to the CD environment deployment. So you need to wait for the front end changes needs to be proposed, and also you will be accessing a data via a Sitecore assemblies which are deployed on the Sitecore server itself. And if you need to share data with any of the third-party system or in your organization, if any other verticals are there and they wanted to access your data, you need to generally write your own API proxy layers to share the data. So that is also a time consuming and maintenance will be there, right? So in those cases, backend and UI code plugins and front-end template and CSS both are tightly coupled with each other. When we talk about a headless CMS like a Sitecore headless or any other product headless CMS product, in those cases backend UI and the API are tightly coupled because there the content author will do the content authoring, and the content of the CMS will be shared via the API endpoint. You will be not accessing via Sitecore assembly or within the server. You can get a data with the help of API. It can be a REST API, it can be a web API, or it can be a GraphQL endpoint, depending upon the what type of Sitecore products you are using it. Some are providing in the XML format also, some are in the JSON format, but most of the CMS are providing in the JSON object format because that is easy to traverse in the client-side scripting framework. So benefit of the headless CMS is that you can build up your head application, which is accessed by the end user in any of the text as you are not bound to use the framework provided by your Sitecore CMS provider. You can utilize any of the front-end framework to build the information, right? And it also offer a mechanism so that you can share the data with any of the third-party system independently of your CMS. So you do not need to write any wrapper or anything. So now we will talk about the Sitecore Headless services. So Sitecore introduced a Sitecore Headless or a headless content delivery from Sitecore 9 onwards. So when it's launched, it's called as a Sitecore JavaScript services. Now Sitecore 10 onward, it's called as a Sitecore Headless services. So you generally need to install a Sitecore Headless services module into your CM role so that you will be able to access the headless content delivery for the Sitecore CMS. So it is providing the rendering engine, media handler, graphical layout service. So those things can be utilized to build up the headless application. And also rendering engine is also providing the presentation view of your page. So suppose, for example, if you are designing any page in the Sitecore CMS, so you generally will be adding a page template inside that the layout placeholder is there. You are adding a component and component is also having a data source. So rendering in a engine will convert all of your page output in the JSON format and it will be shared via a API endpoint to the end user. And currently Sitecore is providing the SDK which can be utilized to build up the application like a .NET Core is there and the JavaScript SDKs are there which generally can be utilized to build up the uh, client-side scripting framework headless application like a front-end application. So currently only these two SDKs are there to build up the headless implementation, and the more concentration, or you can say that new features are coming with the Next.js SDK only, not the React, Vue or the Angular. So if you are starting with any headless implementation, so prefer to go with the Next.js. Otherwise, what will happen that if any new components are coming from the site, like out of the box components are coming, so those mostly will be coming with the Sitecore Next.js itself. So in this, what will happen that you can utilize a Sitecore headless with the XMXP and the XM Cloud, as well as with the Content Hub one also you can utilize the Sitecore headless content delivery. If you are on the XM and XP, so you need to buy a separate license to use the Sitecore headless service. So it is not part of your existing license offering, so you need to connect with your sales rep to get more information about the license or pricing. So with the help of this headless services, you can build up the dynamic application also. And one more things you need to consider that always it's suggested that you will not store any of the user generated content in CMS. So in those cases, if you are working with the headless also, you need to consider those limitations or the best practices you need to follow to avoid storing the user generated. Now moving to the other section is the available product from the Sitecore Composable Product Suite, which is offering the headless content delivery. So coming to these two, experience platform and experience manager. So most of us have been having experience of these two products. So these two products can be utilized for a headless content delivery after installing the headless services module. And you can host this product either in the cloud in the form of a VM, or you can utilize the uh, PaaS offering from the Azure, or if you are more into the containerized, so you can utilize the AKS also. Or if you are having a your own data center, like if you go with the Middle East clients or a insurance vertical, right, or a healthcare, so they will be mostly using their own private data center. So in those cases, you can self-host these two products. And if I talked about a Sitecore hosted SaaS product, so Sitecore is providing the XM Cloud product, Plus, and the Sitecore Content Hub one. So in case of a XM Cloud, you do not need to buy any type sort of a separate license or this. You need to connect with the Sitecore sales rep to get a quotation or a offering. So they will be offering a bundling in the form of a XM Cloud Plus, where you will be getting a content management role as well as for your front-end deployment, front-end app deployment, you will be having a preferred partner is a Vercel. So you need to pay extra charges for that also. But Sitecore is giving you a bundled offering for XM Cloud as well Vercel. And with the XM Cloud, you will be getting a subset of CDP and personalized product. You will be not able to utilize extensive feature of a CDP and personalized, but you will be getting less feature. But if you will be taking a offering of a XM Cloud Plus, so you will be getting a full-fledged CDP personalized as well as Sitecore Connect and the Sitecore Suggest. So if you are wanted to move a greenfield project from a scratch with the headless, so it's best to move with the XM Cloud Plus because it's offering you all the product suites from the composable offering, which will be helpful to build up the headless application. In terms of a content hub one, that is you can say that a is a content editor based CMS, lightweight CMS. You will be just creating a data schema. You will be not getting any experience editor type of things to add a component or anything. It will be just a plain data schema for your content or a page. You will be getting a experience edge based graphical endpoint to access the data. So generally, it is utilized by most of the organization where they are having a multiple website or a micro website, and they are more relying on their front-end framework instead of a site code provided at ZK. So those organizations are mostly using the content hub one. So these two ways or a product suite from the Sitecore, you can utilize the Sitecore as a headless content delivery. And before this Sitecore JSS, you already having a OData item service API and RESTful API. So those are not providing the presentation detail of your item. It is just providing the uh, details which are added in the data schema. So if you are don't want to go with the Sitecore headless services module to pay extra license cost, you can having these two options to use that. But you need to write a some sort of a wrapper around Sitecore in the form of a Sitecore controller, so that you will be able to get complete page in the form of a JSON or whatever XML you are writing in the form of API endpoint. You need to write your own logic to do that. Now I will think about a why move to Sitecore headless. So when you are proposing a Sitecore headless services, right, to your client or your organization, so it's not like that you will straight away go and suggest that. Everyone will be asking for a data point why I will go with the Sitecore headless CMS when my existing ASP.NET MVC application is working fine. What's the need for that? So first is that the flexibility and the decoupling. So flexibility meaning here is that you will be getting a flexibility to scale out your front-end application without scaling out your content delivery node, because you are not deploying your front-end application into the content delivery. You will be having a separate node for that so that you can decrease the load on the CD. Itself. Decoupling means that, as I said earlier, that you do not need to wait for the front-end changes to be deployed. Your backend team can work independently. They just need to provide the schema to you for a page, and you can build up the front-end application, or you can do the frequent changes also. So it's not like that you need to deploy complete build from a backend to front-end in a one shot. Other is the developer freedom. So most of the organization nowadays on the based on the client-side scripting framework, so they will be more or heavily using the different NPM packages or out-of-the-box component provided by any type of client-side scripting framework or a community generated product. So in those cases, your team is having a freedom to select a client-side scripting framework like a Next.js, Vue of their choice, and they can use the npm packages and they can decrease the development time itself. So that is for the developer freedom. Future proofing. So nowadays every organization is moving towards a mobile application, or they wanted to uh, create a kiosk application, right? So in those cases, everyone will be not building every application channel in a one shot. They will be starting with the MVP like a desktop application, and then gradually they are moving towards the mobile application. So in those cases, you do not need to do any extra effort in a later stage to share your content as a headless or a via API. Business requirement. So sometimes your business user or a product owner are having a requirement which is very UX heavy, right? So in those cases, maybe you need to do a more frequent changes on your front end side, right? Or you want to make an interactive website. So earlier we used to have a Flash, right, which is heavy. Nowadays there are many animation components are coming, which may be very difficult to implement in the ASP.NET MVC, right? So in those cases, you will be having a flexibility to utilize client-side scripting framework to build up a very flashy or a uh, animated front end. So business user will be not more tech savvy, right? So they are just relying on the UX part of that. So in those cases also, it will be very helpful to achieve the requirement from the business user endpoint. Multi-channel delivery, as I said, that you can build up a different channels of product like a mobile, PWA, or a kiosk application also. And also you can share the data with any third-party system or a upstream and downstream system within your organization without any extra effort, right? So those are the benefit also are there. And also there is not a hard and fast tool that when you are working with the Sitecore headless, right, framework, you do not need to utilize always a Sitecore GSS SDK. Some organizations don't want a dependency on the CMS product. They work independently. So they can work, but issue is that you will be not able to get a benefit of the Sitecore experience editor as well as if you are moving to XM Cloud, you will be not getting a benefit of a page editing in the pages because when you are building a front-end application like similar to the ASP.NET MVC, you will be utilizing the Sitecore provided HTML object, right, to make your fields experience editor friendly. So same way you need to utilize those uh, HTML object in the Next.js section. So that is the only issue will be coming. Scalability and performance. So you can scale your front-end application because front-end application you generally will be deploying on a Linux or you are going with the SaaS. So you can save the cost there. And suppose, for example, if you are going to the production ready any of the Sitecore implementation, so generally people will be having a one CM box and installing all of the rows and the two CD boxes only with the CD rows. So in those cases, you can decrease the CD box to one because you will be maybe having any CDN in front of your CD box itself. So you can save the load there. And also you can go with the one web app itself based on your user load or a two, which is having a less cost as compared to the scaling of a CD. And and also you can go with the SSG based implementation if you want a more performance. So SSG, ISR, those type of implementation you need to consider while building the front end application, and you can achieve the performance also or the Google Lighthouse rating also you can achieve. Project requirement, sometimes you will be having a very large number of a backlog which is UI heavy, or you will be having a more microsite with the different UI. So in those cases, as I said earlier, that you can independently work on the front end part, right? So in those cases, you can do the more frequent release as compared to the you are going with the traditional MVC based implementation where you need to bundle everything all together and you need to deploy to a server altogether. Technical requirement like you are having a Sitecore CMS version which is having a more security vulnerabilities there. If you need to install that also, right? Or if you are having a Sitecore version which is going to sunset. So if you are having a large number of a technical depth in your application, so you need to think about that. Is it beneficial to move from a traditional MVC to headless or not? What are the pain points you will be having in upgrade to the latest version? Or if you are moving to headless, what are the different type of code base or customization you are having? And if you will move to the headless content delivery in the form of a API, so what are the efforts are required? So you need to compare those efforts also while proposing the Sitecore headline. So those are the things you can consider or use as a data point while presenting your case in front of any of your technical team or the organization. Now moving to the feature comparison of the different components involved in XP, XM, and XMC. So first I am talking about a content management role. So content management, as you are aware that the use of a content management role is to create a content, right? So in those cases, you will be required a CM node. So you can either host on the cloud or you can do the self-hosting. But when you are moving with the XM Cloud or XM Cloud Plus, so Sitecore will host that infrastructure for you, and you do not need to host or manage those by your own. So that is a main point also when you are moving to the XM Cloud. Now talk about the content delivery. So similar to the CM role, if you are using the XM and XP, you need to host by yourself. Uh, and you will be getting a GraphQL endpoint, Edge GraphQL endpoint, and a layer service endpoint. So you will be not deploying your application into the content delivery. You will be separately having a server or a node or a web app where the front-end app will be deployed. And the content delivery role is to just share the data via GraphQL endpoint, Edge GraphQL or layout service endpoint to the your front-end application. But you need to provision and manage the infrastructure for yourself. But in case of a XMC and XMC Plus, the content delivery will be happening from a Experience Edge. So in those, Experience Edge is also one of the SaaS product from the Sitecore for a content delivery. So instead of getting a content from a CM and CD or a content management role, you will be getting a data from a Experience Edge. So that is a CDN enable endpoint, and which is providing a data in the form of a GraphQL endpoints. So that is the major difference when you are moving with the XM and XP or with the XMC. And some organization or a client still using the XM and they are utilizing the Experience Edge. So if that is the case, you need to follow. In those cases, you need to install the Experience Edge connector on your XM or XP infrastructure so that when user is publishing the content, instead of publishing to the web database, it will publish the data to the Experience Edge, and Experience Edge endpoint will be utilized in the your front-end application. And one more important thing is that when you are moving or using the XM Cloud, so in those cases, you need to always utilize the Edge GraphQL endpoint because XM Cloud is supporting the Edge GraphQL endpoint. It will be not supporting the layout service endpoint. That is also one difference you need to aware about. Now talk about the front-end application. So earlier when we used to permit the ASP.NET MVC, we will be talking about a CD node always like a content delivery node where the front-end application will be deployed. But when you will come to the headless world, it is called as a rendering host, which will render your client-side scripting code base and it will be accessed by the end user. So in those cases, when you are having the XM and XP based implementation, so the recommended approach is that you will either go with the Vercel or any third-party offering like a service provider, or you can host your own application in a Linux OS-based server by installing a Node.js. But some clients are cost-savvy; they will go with the deployment of an application in the CD node itself. But in those cases, you need to enable an extra port for your front-end application because by default 80 port is open, but you need to open extra port. In those cases, network-related complication arises. So it's always best to use the some cloud hosting provider, or you can do the self-hosting by using the Linux server, and you can install or use the Linux web app for that. But when you are going with the XM Cloud and the XM Cloud Plus, the preferred choice is the Vercel because XM Cloud is providing the out-of-the-box connector or a DevOps pipeline so that you can create a connection between your code repo which is present in GitHub or Azure. You can directly make a connection and deploy to the Vercel. And there are the some features like a build in a less time or some type of a caching which you are getting by default from the Vercel. But if you are going with your own self-hosting or any other if you, by going your own self hostings, and you need to build up your own pipeline type of things to deploy the code into the Node.js. So there the complication can arise. Sometimes I have seen that when you are building up your own pipeline, so the time taken by the Vercel and your own build pipeline is higher, means taking much time. So those are the differences comes into the picture while selecting a rendering host by your own choice. Now we will talk about editing rendering host. So it is similar to the rendering host. The only difference is that it will be utilized by the your CM role to provide the experience editor support. So it is similar to the rendering host. So you can host that into a separate node by installing a Node.js server, or you can utilize Vercel or any other SaaS offering deployment hosting provider you can utilize to do that. This will be generally utilized by the CM role for the experience editing support. So it will be not generally present for the end user. When you are going with the XM Cloud or the XM Cloud Plus, so there also you do not host by yourself. Sitecore will be providing that hosting for you, so you do not need to spend time in the provisioning of that. And there is a one more thing here is that if you have used the Vercel as a deployment provider for your front-end application, so all the application which deployed on the Vercel will be publicly available. So you can enable the login mechanism there. But when you are using that editing rendering host in your CM for the experience editor, open the page in experience editor, it will not work. Why? Because when the CM is making a call to open a page in the experience editor, right? So it will make a call to your front-end application post request. So in those cases, you will be getting a forbidden error. So the only option currently that you need to host a your own Node.js server, and you need to deploy that application there. And you can add a IP restriction there because some of the organization don't want their lower environment application or their editing rendering host available uh, to the outer world. So that is the main issue currently present. So in those cases, if you are having those type of requirement where the editing rendering host should not be available to the outer world or publicly available, so you need to go with your own hosting of the editing rendering host. Now we will talk about a search option. So first I am covering the non-site functionality, means the search provider which is utilized by the content management group. So when you are working with XM and XP, you know that you generally will be hosting your own Solar provider to do that, or you are using the search tags, or some people are using the Covio. So you need to provision your own infrastructure, or you need to buy a subscription from a third-party service provider. But in case of XM Cloud and XM Cloud Plus, you do not need to host. It is provided by the Sitecore itself, right? So, but that Solar endpoints will be not accessible to you because it's the purpose of those Solar endpoints is the search in the CM role, right? So you will be not able to access. And also, if you will be having a custom indexes or a computer index field in your MVC implementation, so those type of things is not going to work when you are moving to the XM Cloud base. So that is also one of the difference in the headless content delivery. But if you are on the XM and XP, because you are having a control on your Solar, and if you are deploying the computer index field, and you are doing the content delivery from a content delivery node, not the experience edge, then you can do that. But if you are using the experience edge with XM and XP, then those things like computer index field and the custom index is not work. Now talked about the search functionality about a for a end user. So as I said that earlier, in XNXP, you are hosting your own Solar instance, or you can utilize the search tag, Sitecore Search, Covio, any of the product you can utilize on your choice, right? But you need to pay cost or infrastructure cost. You need to bear that, right? And you can do all the things here. But you need to remember that if you are going with the Sitecore search or the other product, so the generally the computer index fields and those things are not going to work. The same case with the XM Cloud and the XM Cloud Pass is that you need to host your own search provider or a search hosting provider. Either you can have your own Solar Cloud or the Sitecore search. So if you are using a Sitecore search, so in those cases you need to go with the web crawling of the things. Why? Because if you cannot deploy any custom code or it's not suggested to deploy any custom search related code in the Sitecore CM. Why? Because the content delivery is happening via experience, so all your computer index field and those things will be not available there. So it's better to avoid that and go with the search tags or any other service, Sitecore search or any other search provider. And also, currently there is one limitation is with the Sitecore search is that it will be crawling is enabled for a minimum to 1 hour. If you are having a very important update which needs to be reflected in your front end, so you need to write some sort of a webhook which can immediate update your search stack instance, Sitecore search instance. Case of a analytics with the XM and XP, because it is a headless application, so you will be not getting a context of the end user because it is not aware about that from where the context is coming. So in those cases, you need to rely on the CDP and personalized product from the Sitecore. So you need, if you are having a large amount of XCP data, so you need to push that data into the CDP first before utilizing that. So you need to consider that effort also estimation before moving to the XM and XP, and also you need to write a web experience again to personalize your user experience. So those effort you need to consider when you are moving to the XM and XP plus. So with the XM Cloud, you will be getting a subset of CDP and personalized. But when you are going with the XM Cloud Plus, you will be getting a complete offering from the CDP and personalized to implement a personalized experience. So those are the SaaS product from the Sitecore. So those are the API enabled products are there. But if you are using the CDP and personalized, you will be getting a engage as well, which you can utilize in your front end application, build up the personalized user experience, as well as if you wanted to utilize that with the ASP.NET MVC also. So in those cases, you can utilize the API endpoint provided by the CDP and personalize to build up that. But you need to push data to the CDP before utilizing it if you are having any historical data which is present in the XDB. If you wanted to get a more details about a granular level features, so you can check this good article from the fish tanks, which is providing a more granular level comparison between different products. Now I will be moving towards a reference architecture. So first I am covering a architecture which is providing info on a how the content and the media items are utilized in the ASP.NET MVC as well as in the headless content delivery, because some clients are using XM and XP and they wanted to utilize their MVC application as well as their headless application from the same instance. So if you are seeing that CM content is getting a data and a media file from the CMS, right? And also if the user is publishing a data, if you are having a Solar provider, it will be published here. But if you are using any third-party service provider like a SearchTags or a Covio, so except the Sitecore search, you can publish the data via connector provided by the Covio or the SearchTags. It will be updated in your WebDB. But when you are using the Sitecore search, you need to rely on the webhooks, which you need to use that, and then only you can publish a data, or you are having a publishing pipeline in your XN XP. There you need to use the Sitecore search provider ingestion API to publish the data. And also in most of the headless application, you will be having a service layer. So in those cases, service layer can be utilized to access upstream and downstream system or any third-party system like databases or any other cloud service provider, database storage, or a third-party system you can access and those can be accessible to your editing host as well as, and you can share data with your rendering host. So when we are coming towards the end user application, if you are using the ASP.NET MVC based application, so you will be deploying application in the content delivery node, and data and media file can come from the your CD node, or if you are using the CDN, then you will be able to access the media file from there itself. So if you are having a rendering host, which is a front-end app accessed by the end user, so you can get, if you are using the XM and XP without the Experience Edge, so you can get the rendering host and the media file content and the media file from the CD node. Or if you are using the Experience Edge or any sort of CDN, then the media file can come from there. And as well as if you are using the Experience Edge, the media and content will be coming from the Experience Edge GraphQL endpoint. But one thing you need to consider that when you are moving with the Experience Edge, so there is a limitation of a 80 requests per minute as well as 80 requests per second, something like that is there, as well as there is a 50 MB of media file limitation is there. So earlier, if in ASP.NET MVC, if we have stored large size of media files like a video files in your CD instance, then you need to move those files into the some sort of a digital asset management system like a content hub to store that, because you cannot serve a more than 50 MB of file from the Experience Edge. And also you can utilize the web crawling mechanism also to crawl your data if you are not having any sort of connector between your content management system or a search provider. So with this way, we can think of what are the different components are present in the headless, as well as if you are doing the utilizing the same instance for both headless content delivery or the ASP.NET MVC based application. And in this architecture, I am covering how to utilize the Sitecore search with your headless application, as well as you can utilize with the ASP.NET MVC. So in previous slides, I have covered about a getting a data from a CM, but when you are utilizing the Sitecore SAS based search like a Sitecore search, so in those cases, if you are on XP and XM, so you can patch your publishing pipeline, or you can utilize the webhook to write a custom code which will ingest the data directly to the Sitecore search in a real time. Or you can utilize the web crawling of your ASP.NET MVC application or your head application to crawl the data. So with this way, you can utilize Sitecore search, that is SaaS product, also with your uh, headless application as well as the ASP.NET MVC based application. So, but when you are using the Sitecore XM Cloud, so in those cases, you cannot write or deploy any custom pipeline in your CM role. So in those cases, you need to utilize the webhook. So either you can go with the another Sitecore SaaS product like a Sitecore Connect, which is providing some sort of connector in the form of a Workato, which is a inner layer of a Sitecore Connect. You can write a recipe there, and you can register a webhook in the XM Cloud CM role, and then that webhook can push data directly to the Sitecore search via Sitecore Connect, or you can use any other your API layer or a custom webhook layer, or you can utilize Azure or a would deck to a webhook, and from push data to the Sitecore search, as well as you can push data to the other search provider also if you are using it, and if the connector is not present, like a Kuio and the search type connector are not there, you can write your own webhook or a Sitecore Connect to push data, and then you can also crawl data for your headless application to the Sitecore search. Now move to the Sitecore Experience Edge. So as I said earlier, that Sitecore product like a Sitecore Content Hub 1, Content Hub, and XM Cloud, and the Experience Manager, you can utilize the Experience Edge. So in those cases, content author will be doing the content authoring at a content management role. But while publishing the content with the help of the Experience Edge connector, it will be deploying the content item layout, uh, snapshot, and the media item to the Experience Edge. That is a CDN enabled infrastructure, and you will be getting a GraphQL Edge endpoint, and you will be getting a data in the form of a JSON. So that way you can utilize Experience Edge with any of your XM, XP, or XM cloud to get a headless content delivery. And you do not need to provision the infrastructure for your content delivery if you wanted in the headless way. And then later you can utilize to build up any sort of IoT app devices, application, social media, or any other application you are building, you can utilize that. So you can check more about a Sitecore experience in one of my articles which I have published. Now I was talking about a Sitecore rendering host. So this architectural diagram will be covering a high level components, how the this experience editor is working in the headless world. Is that when the content author logging into the CM and making a request for the any of the page, right? So in those cases, the headless modules which you have installed, right? So that will make a request to the your editing rendering host application. That is HTTP post request to GSS-render, right? So in that case, uh, it will be editing rendering host will be rendering the page or the route, because page is treated in headless application as a route. If you are using the GSS Sitecore GSS SDK, then it will generate the requested page HTML. It will revert back to the your CM role, and then the page will be displayed in the experience editor. But you need to utilize the Sitecore JSS SDK to build up your application. Then only you can have a experience editor support. As I was explaining about a restriction of a, if you have added a security in the form of a virtual, right, to the login based access. So in those cases, this request is going to fail, and you will be not able to open the page in the experience editor. In those cases, you can have an option to self-hosting in Azure or any of the VM. You need to host your editing rendering host. So now moving to the last section about the important things to remember. So as I was telling that it will be not a straightforward things to showcase we are going with the headless. So you need to analyze the business requirement, like whatever requirements are coming, it is going to fulfill with the front end or not. Because if it is a very business oriented logics are there, so in those cases, all business logic you cannot write in your front end application. The purpose of front end application is to show the content. So you need to rely on the API layer. But if you already having a code base, everything in your ASP.NET controller, right? So in those cases, it's not best to move to the XM cloud, because you need to again start from scratch to move everything from the uh, your uh, your .NET controller to the .NET Core based API, or if you are writing, but you can utilize a code. So those factor also you need to consider. See how much effort is required. You cannot use move the code like lift and shift type of things will be not there in ASP.NET Core. You need to refactor your code in the form of API layer. So analyze the technical requirement. So some of the technical requirement become very complicated. Like if you are having a identity and access management system based or a security type of things you need to provide to your front end application. Like some website is providing a secure content. Like if you will log in, then only you need to see that. So if you are in the ASP.NET MVC, you can write everything in your front end layer, right? Sorry, in your ASP.NET MVC. But when you are moving to the headless, you should have a API layer. So from front end, you will be making a call to your API layer. API layer will authenticate and return back the some sort of a JWT token. Then you need to have a mechanism in front end. So those requirements becoming a very complex. So those things also you need to consider what type of requirement technical requirements are there and feasible to move to the API layer. And Sitecore XM or XP as headless CMS. So if you are having a small application or a small content tree, right? Then you can directly do the clean install of a Sitecore headless framework and you can move your code by some refactoring. But some client wanted to run their legacy site in ASP.NET MVC and the new onboarding in the headless. So in those cases, you need to utilize the same instances. So that also will be create sometimes a problem in terms of a data sharing. So those things also you need to consider. Development flow. So in the headless content implementation or development, mostly people rely on the Docker-based installation, right? So you are having a team who knows about the Docker or not, or you are having a systems for development system which is having a good amount of a RAM or a physical storage to do that, or your organization is having a Docker license or not because it's a paid, right? Or if you are having any alternate which fulfill your requirement. So those risks you need to highlight upfront, or the cost also you need to highlight. And the content management, like how the content management is being used, how many numbers of user are accessing, or if you have installed any sort of a custom code in your content management for your content author. So if you are moving to the XM Cloud, right? So in those cases, all your customization like validation rules and those things are not going to work while you are moving to the XM Cloud. So those things also you need to consider. Also the analytics, which is very important thing. If you are having a historical data, gigabytes of data, how you are going to move. It's important to move all data, or they can sit on the historical by moving a database into the Power BI for the for the future use, and rest you can start utilizing the Sitecore CDP. So those type of technical decisions you need to consider. And these are the some references which you can go through if you need a more information on the Sitecore Headless Services module. Now that is a more interesting section like a Q&A. So if you guys have any questions, you can now feel free to ask to me.